And the challenge really is the environmental service may be there and it might have it might even have a metric against it. But the problem is, especially in low governance environments, and Laos and Cambodia are pretty low, that is a very, very different set of distribution of those services. And less so for Vietnam and for China. And so the challenge is, there are, as you said quite correctly, there are a whole range of services being provided by both the Mekong, the Rit, and the whole tributary and the systems there. But again, the real trick is getting governments to accept and to take on responsibility for that. All of these governments, overnight, could, if they put up their hand and said, okay, we'll be part of this, they could do it. I mean, even Laos and Cambodia, which are fairly well down the governance stakes, has by far and away enough capacity to be able to, don't quote me on this, but solve 70% of the issues in a very, very short space of time. This truly is an overarching governance issue. I think it's important that people add knowledge to the picture, because a lack of knowledge is a terrible thing. But really that that governments here, overall governance issues, and let's just say, end with it, also a bit of hope as well. We may not be very happy with where some of these governments are in terms of their own decision making and even democracy in the case of a couple of the countries, but it's a lot better than it actually was. It's actually countries like Laos which are more concerning in the overall direction it is going as a country and as a government. But you see Cambodia and Vietnam at the moment, they are now realizing the potential drawbacks of their decisions, implications of that, and now nobody knows this better than China. So it's very easy to blackball China on this issue, and I think they have done some, made some terrible decisions, and they continue to make some terrible decisions. But you look at civil society, what's being talked about now, it's no different from post-industrial Britain, 250 years ago, or even the US, where massive, quick industrial development came hand in hand with a great deal of pollution and destruction and disenfranchisement of a lot of people. Out of that came an environmental movement. The environmental movement comes from the brown movement first, comes from pollution because it's the most proximal issue, and out of that comes the green movement. We see this now happening in China and in Cambodia. So whilst we all, groups like myself especially, like to take a bit of credit and say, we're influencing these countries or these systems, we should also recognize that these movements are actually appearing in many of these countries organically within, and those are going to be the real drivers of change. And I think there is some reason to be optimistic. The question, as you posed quite correctly, is there time?
Is there time? So we are out of time, and Joe sort of jumped ahead and took my last question, which was, I thought which was Q's statement about what she wanted. She wanted her village to look like Phnom Penh, which also struck me as, a really powerful and complex sort of statement. I was trying to figure out exactly what she was meant by that. And so, to close, I'd like Kalyanee to talk about that a little bit, knowing her and sort of what you think, how you interpret that. What are her aspirations and how you see her vision playing out in Cambodia?
Yeah, that's a great question. I had a lot of opportunities to really get to know Q, and over the course of 2.5, 3 years, I really got to know her pretty well. And that was one of the last questions that I actually posed to Q, and I was really shocked by her answer. And shocked mainly because I realized later on that I come from a privileged background. I come from the United States, I have a privileged education. I'm coming back to Cambodia with this background, and so I knew already what the consequences are of having a factory in a village. I knew what would happen if the factory came to Q's village. First her land would be grabbed from her, she would be thrown off the land, and she would have no access to it and no compensation even perhaps. And then, there would be, the water would become contaminated, and there's so many consequences to that. And so I was really shocked when I heard this first from her, but then I took a step back and I realized that she wants what all of us want. She wants the electricity, she wants running water, she wants employment and opportunity, but most of all, she just wants to stay in the village and be with her mother and her family, and she doesn't want to leave. And the most logical solution for her is to actually bring the factory to her village instead of her going to the factory. That seems quite logical. So when you think of it that way, I think her aspirations are just the same as our aspirations. And I think that she is living, her situation is very similar to our situation here in the United States. I don't think we even fathom the impact of our actions right now. The impact of our use of electricity, the impact of our use of cars and not public transportation, the impact of our factories and, and all the emissions, the carbon emissions that we are emitting into the air. So we don't even fully fathom what's going to happen to us, 20 or 40 years down the road. She can't fully fathom that either because she doesn't know what would happen if the factory actually came to her village. So I really appreciate your comment, Joe, that, that this has to be a grassroots movement within the country, that the people themselves have to understand what kind of impact that would have. And there's a brown revolution, and after that there comes the green revolution. And I think actually in Cambodia right now, this is the prime time. A lot is changing. I don't know if many of you are aware of what's happening in Cambodia, but we just had an election in Cambodia, and the opposition party came out really strong because the people are supportive of change. And they're not necessarily supportive of the opposition party, perhaps, but they just want change. They just want change to happen. And when I was there during the elections, there were people, up in arms, raising their hands, shouting, no, 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 saying change, change, change. This is what they want. And I went to Cambodia and I followed Kyo back to her village. And as she placed her vote in the ballot box, and I asked Kyo, Kyo, what do you want? What do you want for your family? What do you want for yourself? What do you want for the future of Cambodia? And she said all she wants is a better wage. Meaning all she wants is access to livelihood, a way to support herself and her family. And that's really what Cambodia wants. And for them, that means, conservation, and that means, or should mean, conservation, but it also means opportunity. And so I think, the MRC, the government, organizations, I think everyone needs to work together, hand in hand, to understand what Kyo wants, what the Cambodian people want, which is opportunities, but not at the threat of, loss of livelihood or loss of their natural resources. And I think that's really what it comes down to.
Thank you, Kalyanee. I am going to close the discussion here, and hopefully we can continue it at the reception. On behalf of MacArthur, I want to thank Kalyanee and all the panelists for being here, and of course thank all of you for coming. It's a beautiful film, and we're very happy to be associated with it.
Thank you, Chris.
Thank you very much.